concept around death and funerals really had not changed since it seemed 100 years before. Now, for me, it seems 200 years ago, we're doing the same as we were. It is changing, but we're doing the same as we were 200 years ago. When it comes to dying, just live a little.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Death Goes Digital podcast with me, Peter Billingham. One day you too will bite the dust. You'll breathe your last. You'll meet your maker. The rock stars, the rickshaw drivers, the drifters and the deep sea divers. One day we all up and die. And with that news flash, you are greeted and you enter the world of huunuu. Yes, huunuu. Huunuu is a funeral website with very few comparisons, I think, in the world. It's a place where you can create those crucial conversations and you can see and you can learn and you can enjoy some of the most amazing and inspiring businesses from around the world that are connected to the bereavement industry. But more importantly, and this is something that I love about this project, it's about living life to the full. It was started by Claire and Steve Turner, and today we have Claire, and she's known as the boss's boss, and Freya, who is the Chief Officer of Making Things Happen, as guests on the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Peter. I'm Claire.
Hi, Peter. Freya here. Thank you for having us.
Well, it's a pleasure to do so. I am so intrigued and extremely interested to learn about what huunuu is. And when I came across it and I heard the name and saw what you was doing, I thought this would be really something that I know the audience of the Death Goes Digital podcast would love to learn more about. So thank you for your time.
We're really happy to share it with you.
Well, with all my guests, the most important thing I want to ask, first of all, is these three questions to get to know a little bit about you. And the very first question is something I'm sure, knowing now a little bit about the platform that you're building, that you have had some thought about. And the first question is, what is going to be your funeral song someday when one day you all up and die?
Peter, if my tastes don't change, and it's unlikely, definitely the song that would be played at my funeral would be Mr. Brightside by the Killers. It's just, I love that sort of rocky, crazy element. I really, really enjoy it.
Any particular reason why that particular song?
For those people that know me, even though I'm in my 50s, it does not stop me jumping out of my seat or entering an empty dance floor, even in a strange pub where nobody's dancing at a Christmas party in Windsor. I will dance to it. It invokes real freedom within me.
Is that your karaoke song of choice too?
No. I don't sing. My tones are far too low.
You just dance.
Absolutely.
And Freya, what about you?
I think it's really hard to pick one song, but I recently came across this concept of a personalised playlist where you create a song for each of your loved ones, and you give them a song that you two shared together. So if I think about someone like my mum, there'd be a real good bopping Queen track in there, because since I can remember music being played, that one was always the one on. And I really like this idea of creating a playlist that has something for all of those different people, so they can have a song that we shared together.
What a wonderful idea. And is that done through something like Spotify or something like that, or is it a place that people can go?
I think it can be anything. So if you think about huunuu, you can create plans, and on there you can write your own ideas, and in that you could put on there, these are all the different people and these are the songs I want for them. You could create it on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you can find the music, really. I think as long as you're marking it down and then sharing it out with people, it doesn't matter what platform you use.
Well, that's a really important thing to know, that people do need to share that information. But I'm not letting you off that light. You can try, but I need to know. I need some information. So if it wasn't your mom, give me another person who you would have a song that you would share with, and what would that song be?
Oh, difficult. I think there's a lot of different people. There was a Passenger song actually that I used to, my first year of university, that I would play on repeat. So I think he would definitely be in there. Some Ed Sheeran for me and my brother. because we're off to see him next year. And I mean, we've been watching him live since we were back when we were 18. So yeah, that's been one as well. So yeah, there's definitely a couple of different acoustic, I think, music. I think from the Ed Sheeran song, I'd actually go with the A-Team. Just because that has resonance of the first one I ever heard from him, really.
I think it's true what you both said. It's amazing how music does identify, well, times and places and people, and it has such a strong emotional tie with us that it is difficult to choose that. But that's why I think it's really important, as what you guys are doing, is to share that conversation, because I know that it can be extremely stressful and emotionally pressurizing, really, for families to choose a piece of music at a funeral, hoping that it would be the one that would be fitting. And so I think that to be able to do that in advance helps a lot of people in many different ways. Okay, question number 2 is a question again I ask everybody. Is there particular books that you both think everybody should read before they again up and die?
So we had a little bit of a chuckle about this, and there are two. There's a favourite book that just really resonates. Again, it's that the feelings that it sort of brings out within you, and that's A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini, and that's about people's fight and understanding, and that whole sort of, I don't know, that choice within yourself, despite what happens around you. Just a really, really empowering but deeply moving book, and empowering from an understanding perspective from my point of view. And then the other book for me, I will have one, and we had a bit of a chuckle within our team meeting, is around called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And we do a lot of work around being a healthy team, and that's not physically healthy, but that's working in a really, really healthy way. So and it's those 5 behaviors that we strive to have with ourselves, and how we work really well together as a team. What about you, Freya?
I think I'd have to recommend, thinking at the minute, My Sister's Keeper. I think for me, I've read the book, and I've also seen the big Hollywood hit film. And the two, obviously they change things, but the two have a completely different ending, and I won't give it away. But if you've seen the film and gone, oh, I really like this, it's a great little, one to watch, read the book, because the book has an impact that the film just can't capture. So yeah, definitely My Sister's Keeper.
Okay. Well, let's stay with you for a second then, Freya, and let's ask you that next question, because the next question would be obviously related to that, is what would be a film that everybody should see if that isn't one of them?
Yeah, so I'm going to be, it might not be a cult classic or anything like that, but it's one that I've watched for my entire life. So it's the 1991 version of Beauty and the Beast. And I know that's very Disney and it's very childlike, but I think it's that thing about everyone should be able to have that fantasy element in their life, and watch something that's actually a guilty pleasure. And that one's mine. Gets watched once a year. So definitely the original Beauty and the Beast.
What about you, Claire?
Mine's not dissimilar, but it's Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and it's a film. It's my most watched film. Unlike Freya, I don't watch it every year. However, I absolutely do. Apart from there's obviously some drama in it, I really, really enjoy that sort of like freedom to be who you are, and that whole sort of, the children and granddad and everybody not being political, being the people they want to be, and not because they're an adult or they're old, being somebody else. Just I really love the essence of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Apart from I don't like the child catcher.
I was just going to say, not too long ago, I don't know why it was now, we were watching that, and I thought that scene, I've let my children watch this film, and this child, I can smell you. I'm thinking they're probably going to need to have therapy years from now that I'm going to end up paying because I made them watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Well, thanks, guys, for telling me just a little bit about yourselves and trying to get to know you a little bit. Let's talk now about this project that you've entitled Huunuu. Now, it started back, from what I could find out, back in July 2014. And I would be interested to know, how did it start? Where did it come from?
Well, it started a long way back, past 2014. It's been a pipe dream. Who knew? started in 2014. But there's been a pipe dream many, many, many years ago. Very sadly, the first funeral I went to was my best friend at the time. It was her father. I was only 13. And about 15 years later, I then went to her mother's funeral. And in between that, I probably attended about 6 or 7 funerals, which was quite a lot for someone of my age. And each time I went, I never really understood what I was supposed to do. And whilst I always checked, I didn't know what I was supposed to wear or how I was supposed to behave. And particularly with Sue's parents, that whole bit about, and I was very close to her, and particularly with her mother's death, it was quite a traumatic time. And we didn't really know what to do, but she really wanted to celebrate her mum's passing and her mum's life, actually. So we did some sort of interesting things along the way, and I'd suggested to her that maybe we had flowers made from bingo cards, that sort of thing, and or a bingo card flower arrangement. And then maybe we played bingo, and she was no. And then as we got to the wake, she suddenly said to me, I want to play bingo. So I found myself running through a little town on the Isle of Wight trying to buy bingo games. And that's what we did. We sat and played bingo, and it was really, really uplifting. And it was really the essence of Betty. And I think from that point on, I knew I needed to do something different. And I knew I've always been sort of in a customer-facing sort of role. But the whole concept around death and funerals really had not changed since it seemed 100 years before. Now, for me, it seems 200 years ago, we're doing the same as we were. It is changing, but we're doing the same as we were 200 years ago. And then, sadly, 7, nearly 8 years ago, I lost my stepfather. And I'd already started a lot of research into trying to work out what I was going to do and what this pipe dream was. And it was just after Mark had died where it really started to sort of come together and started to sort of resonate as, actually, I need to get people talking. Nobody really knows what to do. And even with my research and visiting the funeral directors, I was having the same experience. I still didn't know what was expected of me. I didn't know what my choices were. And when I wanted to have something different or ask a different question, it was quite uncomfortable. And I was on this time-driven thing. And my mother at the time was in a very, very distressed state. You know, even when someone's going to die, it's still if you know they're going to die if they're terminally ill, it's still a shock. So whether you're expecting it or whether you're not, you're in your worst state and having to make a series of decisions. So that then started to sort of shape itself up to, okay, we need to get people having the crucial conversation. So huunuu is about getting people to have the crucial conversation. We believe talking about death and thinking about death, it gets you thinking about the lives that you want to lead. And therefore, you know, that's where huunuu sits. So huunuu is all about you having that conversation that you wouldn't necessarily have with your teenagers around the table. It's about other people in your life being able to contribute into those thoughts and discussions, not when you're 55 or 65 plus or the people around you are starting to die and you suddenly realise your own mortality, but for the people, whether they're Freya's age or my age, to go, actually, this is me. This is what's important to me now. And I want those people to share in that conversation. So huunuu allows, you know, you to have that conversation online, share it with your friends and family. They can contribute into your plan, and we can help inspire you with all those different sort of ideas and choices that are out there.
And I have to ask you, where did the name come from?
Okay, so it all started. We did have a previous idea around Fantastic Farewell, but that never sort of went anywhere. It was very, very cliched. And I wanted a name, and I wanted a 2-syllable name that we could start to really build a brand around. And I came up with a 2-syllable name, which was called Fudbox. And I thought it was great because FUD is fear, uncertainty and doubt in my world. And I thought it was quite a nice name, but it has a very rude meaning, a slang meaning, which I didn't realise. So when this was pointed out to me, I then sort of retreated back to the team and said, okay, what do we do? We had a bit of a brainstorm session, and we had everything from moo, lulu, moohoo, and huunuu was the only word that didn't really exist. And I just looked at this mass of words and said, huunuu. And we did solid checks on it this time rather than getting carried away with some sort of concept. Made sure it didn't have any alternative meaning, any slang meaning. And then we were like, this is great. It is something that you could really build a brand around. So who knew? And it isn't so much the question, but we can use it as part of that question. And it's quite distinctive and it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think it's true what you said. I think for being able to have something that is very distinctive does help to build that brand and that idea around, because then, from the little bit that I've looked at with the website, and I know it's still early days, that itself is very distinctive. And so I think it matches exceptionally well with a really individual and memorable name. So for somebody who's perhaps never looked at the website, simply how would you describe the platform that it is and what they're going to find there?
Well, first of all, we try to make it quite irreverent in terms of we're trying to give a real essence of, don't be frightened to come and have a look. Don't be frightened to sort of be a little bit different or have some different ideas or some curiosity or be looking for some choices or inspiration. So I would describe it as being quite sort of fresh and welcome and quite, in terms of its design. And we Freya and our design team have worked really, really hard to get that essence of feeling. We've got a short video on the website which tells you what huunuu is about. It describes sort of like how you can go on and have those conversations, and it shows you how you can go on and make a plan. But it's not the thing that makes us fundamentally different. Our USP is you don't just make a plan, but you invite people in to your plan. So I could invite you, Peter. I can invite Freya. And you might see something tomorrow and go, my goodness, that's what Claire was talking about. Take a photograph and upload it and suggest it to me, which I can then build into my plan. So it's about that, having that crucial conversation, and you, as well as me and my loved ones, being able to participate in my life should the inevitable happen.
But having, as you say, importantly, have had that conversation in an appropriate and right way where you can make those decisions without that pressure. And I think from my experience of dealing with families in that position, that would make it would make a very difficult situation perhaps not easier, but it would definitely help in taking some of that fear around. Am I making decisions on this day which were trying to sum up this person's life that actually that wouldn't have been theirs? So it's very interesting.
The challenge with that is it is normally one person that needs to make a series of decisions in a period of somewhere between 7 and 21 days. They're at their worst point. But death is as much about the living as it is about the deceased. And quite often that person's trying to make those decisions with the best intention, but they have no idea. I was in a room full of sort of, mid-20 to mid-30-year-old, about 15 people yesterday, and we were having this great conversation about huunuu, and they were talking about death so freely that they wouldn't normally, and they were like, oh, this is really good. So we know it's a conversation starter.
When you said that, one of the things I read that you put on your site, that you started this because you wanted a passion to make talking about death and funerals easier, and you alluded to it earlier a little bit, but how do you then see the industry now, the conversation and perhaps how people deal with it in this day and age? It's
definitely changing, particularly in the last 5 years. I mean, there's been a lot of great work. I mean, if you look at the work that John Underwood, who's recently passed away, but the work that he did around the Death Cafe and getting all those conversation and dying matters, there's a lot more conversation. People are a lot more open and willing on a more generic sense. My experience says when you talk to people one-on-one, they're very happy to talk about death. We've all been approached in the street where someone walks up and says, would you like to do an interview, or can you fill out a survey? And I'm sure many of our listeners have sort of said, oh, no, I don't have time. I've been in that scenario with the team. And when we say it's about death or about your funeral, 95% of people stop and say, oh, and they're really interested. So I would say there's a lot more publicity. There's a lot more access. There's a lot more discussion. And I think the public now understand there's a lot more opportunity. we really want to move that conversation, not to the people that are thinking about they need to make a funeral plan. So, traditionally marketing's been targeted at sort of the retirement age. We want to get people talking much, much earlier. Doesn't matter if you're 23, 33, 43 or 93. We want people to be having those conversations and using technology to do so. And then you'll have the conversations around the table. We don't want to take that away either. They're really important, really, really important.
And what have you found the response so far from people to huunuu?
Very, very positive. Beginning of June, we went off to the National Funeral Exhibition. So we went off to the industry. We got a really, really good response, both from the industry and those people visiting the exhibition. So from the clergy and small businesses, certainly we got a very positive. We love what you're doing. We love the concept and we love the branding. We were completely overwhelmed by the response in the industry. When we're out talking to the general public, we went off and did an event up in Norwich of Dying Matters Week. We are constantly a point of interest when we're out there face-to-face showing our wares. So we know what we need to do next. We're constantly evolving, we're constantly developing, and we're constantly improving. But I cannot, there's been there's probably a handful of people said it's not for me, or I'm not really interested, or I don't really get it, but we're improving our messaging absolutely all the time. So the response for us has been a really positive one.
What I loved about it when I went on the website and had a little play around and looked at it was that I think the branding and the accessibility of the platform is nothing like you would normally see around the conversation of death. One thing is, it seems that the colour purple is quite absent, which usually is on funeral sites, and font that's usually in a script kind of style. And I thought it was really interesting. And what I really loved was when you look at it visually, it's very appealing, and those icons and colours that are like a menu across the top of all these different choices that can link to things. It's very different. I mean, what if somebody comes to the platform, what are they going to find, and how do they try to navigate around it?
So what they'll find is first they'll land on our Explore page. So you'll find all sorts of vendors. Freya's going to talk a little bit, I'm sure, about that in a moment. But you'll find all sorts of vendors. You'll have an opportunity to think about whether you want to be planning for your death or think about the life that you want to lead. You'll have an opportunity to go through those different types of, be them small or large, people that are supplying really interesting products and services, and very traditional ones as well. And you'll have an opportunity to join up, make a plan, share it. You'll be able to look at other people's ideas and inspiration, and generally just sort of get a bit of a feel for the options that are out there, because a lot of people don't really know what options or choices there are.
Tell me about the quiz. I noticed when you look at the top of the website, you have this opportunity to take a quiz, and I took the quiz, and it presents you with this, like, for want of a better word, a sort of Pinterest-like board, a smorgasbord even of bereavement choices. Where do those options come from?
I think that comes back a little bit towards what we're talking about the creativeness of the website and the visuals and the colours and everything else. And when we were designing huunuu, we really wanted it to come through that people have choice. We have choices in everything we do. In every single choice that we make in the day is something that we thought about, and that's what we need to have around death as well. So the quiz sort of came into that element along with the branding. It was this idea of, we don't want to lead people down a strict path, because actually people use websites in completely different ways, but we want to give people an option where they can interact with it and personalize it to themselves and find those choices that they really align to. We're actually, at the moment, we're going to take the quiz down for the start of huunuu, as we're about to launch a big competition instead, which is going to lead people in and help them to really get an idea of what we're doing. But the personalization wizard quiz will definitely play a big part in us for future in helping people to start their journey, because actually you might come on and go, okay, I know what I'm doing, I'm curious, I'm in here. Or you might pause and say, okay, how do I get started? And that just really gives you a pause to go, okay, what am I all about? What is it that, I interact with? What is it that resonates with me as a person? And then we can give them products, services, ideas and concepts based on those selections. What's
the most creative idea that you've seen, or either you've got a link to or you've heard about at a funeral, that sort of like, even for you, as you've started to think about this more, might have stopped you in your tracks?
I think I've had many moments of that. I think when you actually get into the industry, you find out how many amazing things are out there. But I think from the creative side, the ones that always come for me, and it's going back to personalization again, is where people do something for their funeral that means something to them. So whether it's, having a Starship Trooper leading your procession, or we've seen a guy who had a do-it-yourself at-home funeral where people came along and they sung music and they really interacted with what he was as a person in life, to people who make their own coffins or have home memorials. I think if people make it creative and about themselves, those are the things that really stop you, because it makes you interact with that person on a real level of, that's what they were like.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How do you as a team see that the internet and sort of digital technology in all its forms is going to impact the discussions about death in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think it already is. If I think about the stuff that's out there, we have access to technology 24 hours a day, whether we're on our phones or on our computers. We're always logged into this social networking area, and information is given more freely. So you might be reading an article, or you might be watching a podcast, listening to a podcast, or watching a video, and you're more likely to be open and interacting with things like that. There was a recent one of promession that went around Facebook, where people were looking at this idea of promession and really going, this is really cool. This is something different. And without that technology, it wouldn't have been able to circulate. I think around the conversations as well, the fact that we now live our lives online and we share so much. We share pictures and information, where we work, who we are with, what we do. All of our personal information sits online. So there's really going to be this thing around digital legacy in future. And I think it's something that we have already started tackling, but there's something that we can do so much more with. Because, there's this thing around Facebook becoming, in a few years' time, Facebook will have more accounts of those people who have passed than it will for those who are alive. And things like that are things we really need to think about. How do we go ahead with that? How do we manage that? How do we want to leave our mark once we're gone?
What's your opinion about how the funeral industry are responding to that? Do you see it's being driven by them, or do you see it's being driven by the families and, for want of a better word, consumers, the people who unfortunately are forced in that situation of having to make choices around something that they're going to, spend a significant amount of money on?
I think that there are people in the funeral industry, that are really engaging with technology. But equally, there are obviously areas where it's slightly more difficult to. And I think that's where huunuu comes in, because for our vendors, what we're doing is we're trying to bridge that technology gap for them. So we work with them to help them to bring the conversations online and to really engage with the digital movement. And I wouldn't say it's just the funeral industry either. I think it's the creators of these big technology platforms that also need to think about the impact that it's having as well. So I think there's definitely moves and shakes and changes. There's a lot more that can happen, and hopefully huunuu will have a really big impact on that and help the people in the funeral industry to stay up with that modern new technology and the changing conversations.
That's certainly true. So what's your plans for the future? Tell me, where do you see this going and building over the weeks and months to come?
So at the moment, our immediate plans are all around enabling some of those small, and large, but enabling sort of our suppliers of the industry, our vendors, to come on board and be able to self-serve, so they can actually bring their products and services to us. And our next piece following that very, very shortly, as Freya alluded to, is all around gaining sort of like brand awareness and actually building that out in the broader public. So actually we sort of let people know about huunuu, let people know about these amazing vendors, and ultimately enact that sort of social change around having the crucial conversation and creating plans. We've got some really, really aspirational ideas. Hopefully, if we can make a success of what we're doing at the moment, our next steps following that, we want to do some stuff supporting terminally ill children. We've got some really interesting ideas around that. And we also want to help people that are thinking about their life decisions. So whether it's buying a house or having a baby or whatever, but that get them having that sort of difficult conversation in a very real way, rather than talking about planning their funeral, but talking about where they aspire to. So we want to do some work with some of those key people that are around when there's a major life event. So whether it's will writers or people that are buying houses, it's actually trying to bring that together and, as Freya says, bridge those gaps and create the space where people want to have the conversation, not forcing them to, but giving them the option to.
You told me that you've got a big launch event that you're thinking about taking place in the not too distant future. Tell us a little bit about that.
In the coming months, it's really exciting for us. Obviously, we've been working, like Claire says, pipe dream for years, but really huunuu for the last 3 years has now been working to this. And what we're doing is we're going to be releasing a fantastic competition, which is going to allow people to sign up to huunuu and create a plan. And when they do that, they'll be entered into a draw to win a week in a French manor with the ability to bring themselves and up to 24 guests with £500 travel spending money. So it's going to be a really exciting launch competition for us to really, really get us out in the market and show people what we're all about. So, yeah.
And when's that going to take place? When can people see that coming into to operation and enter that competition?
Yeah, so it's going to be launching the tail end of August, around the 23rd, and it will run throughout September till the end of September, and we'll then be drawing our winner in October. So very soon. So yeah, definitely keep your eyes open for it, because it's going to be a great little win.
That sounds exciting. Sounds as if it would be a good place to sit and have all sorts of conversations, not just a conversation about bereavement. A couple of last questions. What do you think, working over these last few years in this bereavement industry, how's that changed your view of life?
From my perspective, it still grounds you in the sense that you come across a lot of either very inspirational people doing things because they've come through either some significantly difficult times or really emotional times. There is an element of it that actually you recognise, and though we are all dying, we're human beings at the moment. There's nothing going to make us live eternally. So it does have that, for me particularly, live every day as though it were your last and live it to the full. So I think certainly in the industry, it can be perceived as being quite dour, but I do think that certainly the people in it can be quite jovial, and we want to bring that a little bit of irreverence to it and just that little bit of brightness. And actually, it is all about today. And it's when you do, sadly, when we all pass on, it is the people that we leave behind, and we need to leave them something quite powerful and energetic behind, rather than a lot of confusion. Grief is absolutely a human emotion that we need to have. It allows us to recognise the things that are really important. But certainly, I would say being in the industry and being around it definitely makes you think about what you're doing for the day.
If people want to know more about huunuu, if they want to know more about this competition and they want to learn about what you're doing, how's the best way to find out that information and get in touch with you?
Well, certainly, if anyone wants to get in touch with us, so write us anything or ask us any questions, the easiest way is hello@huunuu.com, and that's HUUNUU.com. So we'll take any emails and we'll definitely respond to you on that. With regards to our competition, then certainly follow our Facebook page. We'll be all over social media. We hope to do some external advertising, so maybe you'll see us in some of your local towns. But certainly sign up to the huunuu Facebook page. We'll definitely be all over that. And we'll definitely be sharing not just what's happening in terms of the competition, but also some of those exciting things that we get up to and where we go, and some of the changes and the interesting suppliers that we find out there.
Well, it sounds as if it's been a tremendous journey, not only over these last couple of years, but even many years that have brought you to this point. And yet it sounds almost as if this is just where the exciting adventure begins. And I sincerely wish you well with the idea, because I think the more that we can talk about and the more that we can encourage people to sort of get rid of the taboos about talking about death, it helps us all. So I really appreciate your time today, and I wish you well for the launch and these next coming months.
There's one final thing I'd just like to say, Peter, both to you and to all your listeners. We do, and we avidly believe it, when it comes to dying, just live a little.
Thanks very much for your time today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Death Goes Digital podcast with Claire and Freya talking about the new funeral website, huunuu. Before you go, I'd like to introduce you to Sandy Weatherburn. Sandy Weatherburn is the founder of Social Embers. And Social Embers is an online bereavement resource that offers digital legacy advice and digital bereavement support to a whole range of clients and organisations. If you haven't come across Social Embers, then I would suggest you head over to Sandy's website at www.socialembers.com. There you'll find lots of information and also some details about the new Social Embers app that she has recently launched. I'd also like to say a special thank you to Sandy, who left a review on iTunes. It helps us so much tell more people about what is happening in the digital bereavement world. So Sandy, thank you very much for the kind words that you said on iTunes as a review. And if anybody else would like to do that, I would be so grateful, as it really does lift the profile of the podcast. So until next time, thanks for listening. This is Peter Billingham from Death Goes Digital.
Let Death Goes Digital be your guide to building a sensitive, relevant, and successful digital reputation for your funeral business. If you would like to learn more or book Peter as a speaker, coach, or consultant, head over to deathgoesdigital.com. Till next time, thanks for listening.